January 9th, 1945, 4:23 a.m., Hatten, France. Private First Class. Vito Bertoldo lies at the bottom of his foxhole. The MG42 has been firing at his position for 6 minutes straight. 6 minutes of continuous hell. The sound is like nothing else in war. A ripping noise. Fabric being torn apart at 200 rounds per minute. 20 bullets every second. The Germans call it Hitler's egg, Hitler's saw. The Americans call it the sound that means you're about to die. Bertoldo presses himself into the frozen dirt, waiting for the firing to stop or for a bullet to find him. This is where his story reaches its breaking point. Bullets crack overhead. Some hit the lip of his foxhole, throwing chunks of frozen earth onto his back. His hands are so cold he can barely feel his M1 Garand. The temperature is 12 degrees below zero. He hasn't slept in 31 hours. Artillery, mortars, machine guns. The Germans have been attacking since yesterday afternoon. Wave after wave of infantry. They keep coming. They need this ground. They're willing to pay in blood to take it. Bertoldo knows what that means. This isn't going to stop until someone wins or everyone dies. The MG42 goes silent. The gunner is changing barrels. Bertoldo has maybe 30 seconds. He risks a look over the edge. German soldiers, dozens of them, moving through the pre-dawn darkness like ghosts. White winter camouflage making them nearly invisible. They're 200 yards away, then 150, then 100. This is the third. Assault in 6 hours. The first killed half his company. The second killed half of what was left. Now there's almost nobody. Just scattered Americans in shot-up foxholes, running out of ammunition, running out of hope. Bertoldo chambers around, picks a target, fires. The German falls. The MG42 opens up again. Fresh barrel, fresh ammunition. The buzzsaw sound fills the world. Tracers arc through the darkness. Bertoldo drops back into his foxhole. Bullets snap past where his head was. Seconds ago. This is how men die. The kid from Brooklyn who joked about pizza 2 days ago. Dead. The sergeant from Texas who survived North Africa, dead. Both caught by the MG42. Their bodies are still out there in the snow. To Bertoldo's left, a foxhole that had 3 men is now empty. To his right, another empty position. He's alone. 1 man holding 50 yards of frontage. Standard doctrine says you need 9 men. Bertoldo is it. He hears tank engines, German armor, a Panzer IV emerging from the tree line. The Americans have no anti-tank weapons, just rifles and machine guns, useless against armor. If those tanks get into the American positions, it's over. They'll roll up the entire line. The battle for Hatten will be lost. Bertoldo watches the tanks approach and makes a decision. He's not leaving this foxhole. The Germans can kill him, but they're not getting past. Not while he's still breathing. Vito Bertoldo, 28 years old, from Decatur, Illinois, is going to hold this position alone for as long as possible. He doesn't think about medals. He thinks about the guys behind him. Vito R. Bertoldo was born December 1st, 1916 in Decatur, Illinois. His parents were Italian immigrants. His father worked in a factory. They had 5 children. Vito was the oldest. They didn't have much during the Depression, but they had enough. He graduated high school in 1934 and got a job at Staley Manufacturing, corn processing, hot, dirty work, union wages. He dated a girl named Geraldine. They went to movies on Saturdays, church on Sundays, planning a normal life together. Then December 7th, 1941 happened. Pearl Harbor changed everything. January 1942, Vito walked into the Army recruiting office and signed up. Basic training at Camp Roberts, California. 8 weeks of hell. Running, marching, drilling, shooting. Push-ups until your arms give out. The drill sergeants scream at you from dawn until dark. They push you until you think you'll break. Vito made it through. Not the fastest, not the strongest, but he never quit. Advanced infantry training taught him the M1 Garand. 8-round clip, semi-automatic. You learn that the man who shoots first usually lives. The man who hesitates usually dies. By mid-1942, he's assigned to Company A, 242nd Infantry Regiment, 42nd Infantry Division, the Rainbow Division. He's going to war. December 1944, the 42nd Division ships to France. They land at Marseille, war-torn Europe. Destroyed buildings, refugees. They move north into the Alsace region, eastern France, right on the German border. Company A takes positions near Hatten. Strategic importance, absolute. Control those roads. You control the sector. The men dig foxholes in frozen ground, 4 feet deep, just enough to survive. The Battle of the Bulge is raging 60 miles north. The Germans launched a massive offensive on December 16th. Now they're trying to widen the attack, putting pressure on sectors. Like Hatten, Company A gets orders. Hold the position. No retreat. January 8th, 1945, 3 p.m. The German artillery opens up. Shells scream down from gray winter sky. The ground erupts. Trees explode. Buildings collapse. The noise is beyond description. Continuous rolling thunder. Men crouch in foxholes, praying. The barrage lasts 45 minutes. When it stops, the sudden silence is worse. Then the infantry comes. German soldiers in white camouflage advancing 400 yards away. The Americans fire everything. M1 Garands, bar rifles, machine guns. The Germans keep coming. The MG42s open up. 3 of them. That distinctive buzzsaw sound. Men start dying immediately. The first assault is beaten back. 20 Americans dead, 30 wounded. The Germans are regrouping. 5:30 p.m. The Germans attack again with armor, 2 Panzerwaffes and a Stu G3 assault gun. The tanks blast American positions with 75mm rounds. 1 shell lands 20 yards from Bertoldo. The explosion lifts him off the ground, blood running from his nose. Possible concussion. He picks up his rifle and keeps fighting. The infantry comes behind the tanks. Close combat. Grenades, rifle butts, knives. The company commander stands up to organize a counterattack. An MG42 burst catches him across the chest. Dead instantly. The executive officer takes command. He's 23 years old. Orders men to fall back to secondary positions. The retreat is chaos. By midnight, Company A has lost half its strength. 90 men left. January 9th, dawn. The coldest day of the year, 12 degrees below zero. Bertoldo has been awake for 40 hours. His body is shutting down, shaking violently. His feet are numb. Early frostbite. 6:15 a.m. The Germans attack again. No artillery. Surprise assault. They get within 30 yards before the Americans react. Machine guns open up. The position to Bertoldo's left collapses. 3 men dead. The Germans pour through the gap. Bertoldo sees what's happening, grabs extra ammunition, crawls to the abandoned position, starts firing. The Germans think it's still manned. Their attack slows. He's bought 5 minutes, uses them to kill as many as he can. The executive officer reaches Bertoldo's position. "How many you got left in this sector?" Bertoldo looks around. "Just me here, sir." One man holding a position that needs 9. "Fall back to the secondary line. We're pulling out." Bertoldo looks at the battlefield. "If I leave, sir, they'll come through. Here, flank the whole company." The officer knows he's right. "Hold as long as you can. We'll send reinforcements." They both know that's a lie. The company pulls back. Wounded men limping away. Exhausted soldiers stumbling through snow. Bertoldo watches them go. Then he's alone. 1 man in a shot-up foxhole. The Germans are coming again. 8:02 a.m. The Germans attack. Bertoldo fires. Changes position. Moves to a different foxhole. Fires from a different angle. Makes it look like multiple defenders. The Germans hear fire from different locations. They think they're facing a squad, maybe a platoon. They're facing Vito Bertoldo, 1 man. The assault stalls. The Germans pull back, confused. Intelligence said the Americans were retreating, but there's clearly resistance here. Bertoldo uses the lull to gather ammunition, crawls to dead American soldiers, takes their clips, says prayers over each body. He also finds a bar, Browning automatic rifle, 20 round, magazine, full automatic. He drags it back. Now he has 2 weapons. 10:00 a.m. The Germans try again with smoke grenades. Thick white smoke covers their advance. Bertoldo fires blind. He can hear Germans in the smoke. Close. 20 yards. 15. 10. Too close. He switches to the bar. Fires full automatic. 20 rounds in 3 seconds. Sprays through the smoke. Screaming. He's hit multiple targets. The Germans fall back. Noon. Bertoldo has been holding alone for 6 hours. He's killed approximately 20 Germans. Stopped 3 assaults. But he's at his limit. Can't feel his hands or feet. Vision blurry. Hallucinating. Seeing movement that isn't there. His body is shutting down. Hypothermia setting in. He knows he's dying, but they're not getting through. 2:00 p.m. The Germans bring fresh troops. 50 men advancing in coordinated assault. Machine guns providing cover. Mortars dropping shells. This is the final push. Bertoldo fires the bar until empty. Drops it. Grabs his M1. Fires until the clip pops out. Reloads. Germans falling, but more keep coming. He's out of M1 ammunition. Picks up a dead German's Kar 98K rifle. Fires. Works the bolt. Fires again. They're close enough to see faces. Young men. Scared men. Then he hears American voices. Company A counterattacking. Hitting Germans from the flank. The assault breaks. The Germans retreat. The position is held. Bertoldo collapses. Can't move. can't speak. He's done. American soldiers find him, barely conscious, covered in dirt and blood. They pull him out. He can't stand. The medic checks him. Severe frostbite, possible concussion, dehydration, exhaustion. How long were you here alone? Bertoldo whispers. Since morning. The medic looks at the German bodies. 21 in front of his position. You did this? Alone? Bertoldo passes out. They carry him to a field hospital. Doctors work for hours, treating frostbite, warming him slowly. Fluids, food. He'll live, but he'll carry the scars forever. The executive officer writes the report. One man held a critical position for 48 hours, killed approximately 50 Germans, prevented a breakthrough, saved the company. August 23rd, 1945. The White House. The war is over. President Truman stands in the Rose Garden. Private First Class Vito Bertoldo stands before him, still recovering, still dealing with nerve damage, but alive. Truman reads the citation. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. He describes Hatten, the 48-hour stand, the impossible defense. Truman places the Medal of Honor around Bertoldo's neck, the blue ribbon, the star, the highest decoration. I would rather have this medal than be President of the United States, Truman says. Bertoldo just nods. He wants to go home to Decatur. He goes back to Decatur, marries Geraldine quietly. They move into a small house. Vito gets his old job back at Staley Manufacturing. Same work, same plant. He works there for 38 years. Clocks in, does his work, clocks out, goes home. Normal life. The Medal of Honor hangs in their living room. Visitors ask about it. Vito doesn't like talking about the war. Did what needed doing. Nothing special. That's not true. What he did was extraordinary. But Vito sees himself as ordinary. Just a factory worker who happened to be there when something needed to be done. Vito and Geraldine have 3 children. Normal American kids. They grow up knowing their father has a medal but not understanding what it means. Vito doesn't tell war stories, doesn't go to reunions, doesn't do the speaking circuit. Some Medal of Honor recipients build careers on their fame. Not Vito. He's private, quiet. He wants the war behind him. The nightmares come anyway. He wakes up sweating, shaking. Geraldine holds him. You're home. You're safe. But part of him is still in that foxhole, still at Hatten, still hearing the MG42. You don't forget. You just learn to live with it. November 1966. The Army dedicates a building at Fort Sill in Bertoldo's honor. He attends, wears his uniform, makes a short speech, then goes back to Decatur, back to the factory, back to normal life. October 26, 1996. Vito Bertoldo dies of heart failure. He's 79 years old. Geraldine is with him, his children, his grandchildren, everyone he loved. They bury him at Calvary Cemetery in Decatur, not Arlington. He wanted to be buried in his hometown. Small funeral, family and friends. Honor Guard fires 21 shots. Taps plays. The flag is folded, presented to Geraldine. The Medal of Honor citation describes how Bertoldo voluntarily remained at his position when his company withdrew, how he maintained it for 48 hours under continuous fire, how he killed or wounded at least 50 German soldiers, how his action prevented a breakthrough, how he enabled his company to continue defending. Dry military language. But behind those words is impossible courage. Think about 48 hours, 2 days and nights, no sleep, no food after day 1, no water after your canteen freezes, temperatures below 0, under constant fire, artillery, mortars, machine guns, every weapon the Germans had, and he held. The human body has limits. Bertoldo exceeded them all. Military analysts studied the Hatten action, trying to understand how one man did this. The consensus? It shouldn't have been possible. A single rifleman cannot hold 50 yards of frontage, cannot fight for 48 hours without sleep, cannot survive those temperatures. Bertoldo did all of it. The explanation isn't tactical or technical. It's human. He decided not to quit. That's it. He simply decided that quitting wasn't an option, that he would hold or die trying. Once he made that decision, nothing could move him. Not fear, not pain, not exhaustion, not impossible odds, nothing. Germans who fought at Hatten were interviewed after the war. They remembered that position, the continuous fire. They thought they were facing a platoon, maybe a company. When told it was one man, they didn't believe it. Impossible. We identified 6 different firing positions, different weapons. One man cannot do this. But one man did. Vito Bertoldo, 5'7", 155 pounds, factory worker from Illinois. Regular guy, ordinary American, Medal of Honor recipient. He wasn't special forces, wasn't elite. He was a draftee, an ordinary soldier, doing an extraordinary thing. That's the real story of World War II. The Medal of Honor represents courage, sacrifice, duty. But it's more than that. It's recognition that sometimes ordinary people do impossible things, not because they're heroes by nature, but because they're human, because they understand that some things matter more than survival. Bertoldo understood that. When his company withdrew, his duty was technically done. Nobody would have blamed him for falling back. He'd already fought for 24 hours, already risked his life repeatedly, but he stayed, made the conscious choice. Why? He said simply, "The Germans would have broken through if I left." Simple logic, but there's more to it. You don't stay in a frozen foxhole for 48 hours under continuous fire just because of tactics. You stay because of something deeper, something about duty and honor, about refusing to let your brothers down, even when they're not there to see it, even when you're alone, even when nobody would know if you left. You stay because it's the right thing, because your conscience demands it, because you couldn't live with yourself otherwise. That's real courage, not the fighting. The choice to fight when you could choose otherwise. The choice to stand when you could run. The choice to stay when you could leave. That was Vito Bertoldo's choice. Bertoldo's legacy is quiet. No major monuments, no movies, no best-selling books until recently. Just a building at Fort Sill, a grave in Decatur, a Medal of Honor citation in the archives, and the memory of the men who served with him. Company of survivors never forgot. They told their families, their children, their grandchildren. There was this guy, Private Bertoldo. When we pulled back, he stayed, held the position alone, stopped the Germans, saved us all. That's legacy, not through monuments or fame, through the stories people tell, through the memory of what you did when it mattered most. That's what makes the story powerful. When everything was on the line, one man made the difference. One man held the line. One man proved that courage isn't about size or strength or training. Courage is about the decision you make when you're alone in a foxhole and the enemy wants you dead and you could leave, but you choose to stay. That's courage. That's duty. That's honor. That's Vito Bertoldo at Hatten in January 1945. He made the choice. He stayed for 48 hours, under MG42 fire, under artillery, under impossible conditions, and he held the line, alone, against everything. Vito R. Bertoldo, the man who held the front alone, the factory worker who became a legend for 48 hours and then went back to being a factory worker, the ordinary man who did something extraordinary and then spent the rest of his life insisting it was nothing special. The soldier who saved a company, saved a position, saved the line, and then went home and never talked about it. That's the American soldier. That's the American story. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things when called upon, then going back to ordinary life without complaint, without expecting recognition. That's what makes it extraordinary. Not the heroism itself, but the ordinariness that surrounds it, the humble refusal to see yourself as special, the quiet dignity of service without seeking reward. Vito Bertoldo embodied all of that. For 48 hours at Hatten, he was larger than life. He was a giant, a force of nature, an unstoppable defender. For the next 51 years, he was just Vito, husband, father, grandfather, factory worker, American, neighbor, friend, and that was enough for him. That was everything he wanted. The medal didn't define him. The war didn't define him. His life after defined him. The war ended. Bertoldo came home. He built a life, raised a family, worked hard, paid his bills, went to church, helped his neighbors, lived the American dream, the simple dream, the ordinary dream. And when people asked about the medal, about the war, about what he did, he deflected, he minimized, he changed the subject, not because he was ashamed, but because he didn't think what he did was special. He thought any soldier would have done the same. That's where he was wrong. Not every soldier would have stayed. Not every soldier could have held. What Bertoldo did was unique. Out of 16 million Americans who served in World War II, only 464 received the Medal of Honor. Liste. Then 0.003%. The medal isn't given for being brave. Every soldier is brave. It's given for actions that go so far beyond normal expectations that they defy comprehension. For doing the impossible when the impossible was required. Bertoldo qualified. One man, 48 hours, 50 German casualties, one position held, one line that didn't break, one company saved, one battle influenced. That's the impact. That's what one man can do when he refuses to quit, when he refuses to accept defeat. The story of Vito Bertoldo matters today because it reminds us what's possible. We live in a world of limits. We're told constantly what we can't do, what's impossible, what's beyond us. Bertoldo shows us that limits are often just suggestions, that the impossible is often just difficult, that one person can make a difference even when the odds say they can't. He didn't have superpowers, didn't have special equipment, didn't have backup. He had a rifle, ammunition, a foxhole, and the absolute refusal to quit. That was enough. That changed everything. The lesson isn't that we should all be warriors. The lesson is that we all face our own Hattens, our own impossible situations, our own moments when we could quit or we could stay, when we could surrender or we could fight, when we could run or we could hold the line. The specifics don't matter. What matters is the choice. Bertoldo chose to stay, chose to fight, chose duty over survival. And that choice saved lives, changed outcomes, made history. Your choices matter too. Maybe not on the same scale, but they matter to you, to the people who depend on you, to the world you live in. Vito Bertoldo died in 1996, the last surviving Medal of Honor recipient from the 42nd Division in World War II. His generation is almost gone now. The men who fought at Normandy, Bastogne, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, the men who saved the world from fascism. They're passing into history. Soon there will be no one left who remembers, no one who can tell the stories firsthand. That makes it our responsibility, our duty, to remember, to tell the stories, to honor the sacrifices, not with empty words but with understanding. Understanding what they did, what they gave, what they preserved for us. That's why we tell Bertoldo's story, not to glorify war. War is hell. Anyone who's been there knows that. We tell it to honor courage, to celebrate duty, to remember that one person can make a difference, that ordinary people can do extraordinary things, that the line between defeat and victory is often just one person's refusal to quit. Vito R. Bertoldo held that line for 48 hours, alone, under fire, in the cold, against impossible odds. He held, and because he held, others lived. The mission succeeded. The war was won. That's the story. That's the legacy. That's why we remember Vito Bertoldo, the man who held the front alone.